Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to Conscious 2. My guest in the studio today is Mooji. Hi, Mooji.
Hi.
And in today's interview, we're going to be exploring where the absolute meets the relative. Really, one of the things we're passionate about here on Conscious 2 is how states of awakening and realization meet the noise, the challenges, complexity of living in the world in daily life. So, firstly, thank you, Mooji, for granting this interview. I know you have many requests, and I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us.
It's a pleasure to come.
Great, thank you. Well, for people that are watching this that perhaps haven't come across your teaching before, what's the essence of what you teach? What's the heart of your teaching?
The essence of teaching. First of all, I don't like to say that I am teaching anything, It used to feel more comfortable, but it doesn't feel like I'm teaching. I feel like I'm just pointing out something or making something more clear that seemed to be misty or confusing for some people, and I try to make that as simple as possible. But the essence of it would be that all that we perceive or imagine ourselves to be and this world to be, it is just one totality functioning. And that however diverse our thinking and our belief systems are, it is all branches coming off the one tree of this one totality, and that we are this, and that the challenge or opportunity of life is to really know this at a heart level, to really know this, not like as a mental or intellectual knowing, but to experience this as true within yourself. So
Yes.
it's yeah.
Although, of course, that's not how many people experience themselves. They experience themselves as their pain or their suffering.
Yes.
And so, how do you help people see who they are that isn't that?
First, they have to come. They have to be. I don't go out looking for people. I don't find the world in its functioning expression that anything is particularly wrong with it, that I should be going out waving any banners about anything. But if our paths cross, and it seems to be that I sense that we have a space to communicate, I'm likely to really be raising these points, because in any subject that we speak about, if there is some earnestness, some sincerity, some genuineness, if there's behind there a curiosity or an attraction to find something true or real, then somehow I am automatically or spontaneously engaged at that level. And I don't have a planned strategy. I have no strategy at all. I just meet it as it comes, and it something always feels just fine somehow. But your question is like, how would I go about to try and make this more accessible, maybe for people and so on. As I said, there has to already be a movement, either consciously or subconsciously or unconsciously, taking place already for us to meet in any way in which we can somehow get into the meat of this subject, you see. Yes. And there's a trust in me that is there already, because I don't have anything else to really talk about with any enthusiasm or passion apart from this. So somewhere along the line, it emerges, and my reading of the situation happens in that moment. I don't have any predetermined ideas about how I will meet someone or anything like this.
But there's an essence in there of helping people see what's true in them.
Yes.
In terms of pointing towards that.
Yes. Well, first of all, it has to first be clear in myself that when someone comes and they seem to be suffering some state or condition and so on, I fully acknowledge that they are experiencing this. That. But at the same time, I know in my heart what is the cause of it. It's always the same cause. Every problem in the world is the same cause. It's just ego. And it is really a misunderstanding of our fundamental position, that we are really the consciousness and not the person, you see. So there has to be sufficient openness, because I don't go charging at anyone. Or it could happen if that feels to be what the situation is pulling up. But normally we move in a softer way to probe a little bit more into where the suffering begins, and in the shortest and most simple way, try to point out what is the cause of the suffering, and how they are themselves in their true nature, not the thing that is suffering.
Yes. Which is something that I think people understand on one level, and they hear that, and that makes sense. And yet finding a lived experience of that is often very difficult. And of course, one of the problems is people try to have that experience, and they understand in their mind. And when I was preparing for this interview, one of my kind of muses, as it were, was, I know you have many people that watch you on YouTube and watch the broadcasts on a Sunday. And I was thinking someone that has a very busy, challenging life, perhaps has small children, which is demanding, and they hear you and it resonates and it makes sense and it touches them, but they struggle to really integrate that. And I wonder what supports that. What supports...
Everything's supported. Everything's supported in them, except if they're totally identified with their personhood. If they're identified strongly with personhood, in the first place, I don't think that they would be encountering anything to do with satsang in this way. Or they will just throw it off very quickly.
Yes.
There must be already a certain potential receptivity in them functioning to bring them onto that path, at least at the early stages, And I totally trust in this. I recognize it. Even sometimes people seem deeply confused and so on. I know that they're not really confused. They believe they are confused. They're not confused.
They certainly feel confused.
They feel for a time, and we have many beautiful examples of them coming out of this confusion in such a simple way, just from some, what I would call like a twist of consciousness, or the perspective that they're looking from. And immediately, it's like, you're out of it. And it's not that I'm throwing magic powder in their face or nothing. It's very simple.
Yes.
Everything hinges upon who you take yourself to be as the one suffering you're experiencing or whatever you're experiencing. It's almost, I cannot say, certainly on every count, it comes back down to the fact that you as consciousness is living in the self-portrait of yourself as a person. And the person is not a reliable or steady premise on which happiness can somehow be expressed unbrokenly. It will always, it fluctuates between opposites, Yeah.
And yet, our identification with the ego is sometimes so strong.
Yes.
And what it can feel like when we loosen that identification is it can feel like we're dying, it can feel like we're falling apart, and I'm wondering
Let's stop right there for a minute, because you pick on the right things when you say that, you see. Because I would venture to say almost everyone who has re-entered, so to speak, consciously, the recognition of truth and has come to that state where we call enlightenment or the realization of the self, experiences the same things. It's like something that we all go through. Like, it seems that just at that turning point or that opening where something seems to just be bursting open, sometimes the strongest resistance come.
Yes.
You see? Hesitations come, doubt come, a feeling that something terrible is about to happen. But it all comes from the mind. It does not come from the true.
Yes.
It comes from the mind, you see? And so it is important to have someone who knows this, who is aware of this, who can guide you through it. Because the reflex is to go with the fear that, because it feels as though you're losing everything that you have gained, or that you have, amassed or experienced, and like it's all being stripped away. And of course, it feels very threatening. You think, my God, what's next? It's like, me, I'm next. I'm the last one on the list.
And it often feels like we're the only person to have that intensity of, I speak for myself, you know, having those experiences. What it feels like, it can feel like I'm dying, I will no longer exist.
Yes.
And the only thing that seems to help ride through that is a willingness to die, almost a willingness, a wish for something more than the suffering that's there. But I'm wondering, anything you can say that helps people have that courage to take that step?
I would always encourage them simply that you are really just observing this. I would love to be next to them as they do, and very often I'm fortunate enough to be as close as we are, talking to reassure and to guide and to say, listen, but you're noticing this. Just stay in the place of noticing. Don't formulate any premature conclusions about what is happening, because this is just a mental reaction or some psychological reaction. Just hand over your existence to existence. You're right here. Just observe, but don't define yourself or, identify with your feelings for the moment. Just observe them. You see? And many can. Not everyone does, but many can do it. And they, I can feel this. I say, yeah, but it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling. It's like, and I just feel my heart is throbbing. I say, but, you're observing this. Just stay in the place where you're just observing. Don't identify. Just continue being aware of all these, but don't identify with anything for the moment. Like this. And somehow it happens that they're able to say, whoa. I said, well, how is it now? And I said, well, somehow it's kind of okay. Like, I feel I'm okay. Like, and you see, like this, it's one of the ways that people respond to, especially if they have that support.
Yes.
Unsupported in that way, the tendency is to identify that something dreadful is going to happen. You're going to lose everything. You've crossed the line. You will not get able to go back, and you can't go forward. There's no future. There's no past. There's no you, and like this. It's kind of feel
that's a problem. It feels like a problem. Let's say, unless there's that support or that trust.
And sometimes people do say, like I don't think I can face this. And I said, well, who is saying this right now in this moment? No, who is saying this? Is that really your voice? What is saying? Isn't that even isn't the one who is saying, like I don't think I can go through with this? Isn't that not also just a sensation, a thought? Who is doing it? Are you not the one watching it? You see, and if they catch it somehow, then they escape from this trap.
And then something else happens.
Well, perhaps nothing happens. Maybe for a moment they think, "Oh my God," and then, it's so often, observed, that a kind of exhaling happens. Like something like, whoa, like that. And you can see and sense their presence softening up and just like coming back into a place of rest.
Yes.
And very often from this point, it's like a waking up. They see, but what was that? It's like, what was that? They say, well, it's nothing.
Yes, and that brings me to another place I want to explore. And I should say that this interview for me is also a selfish opportunity to ask you the questions that are in my heart, that I feel really curious about, because having had over the years a number of experiences like that, and I feel that place of the egoic self that I take myself to be disappearing, a sense of nothingness, everythingness, whatever, words are hard to describe, and then that experience goes away. Or let me put it differently, I then go away, and my ego comes back, and I'm back in my life. And I was wondering what supports the integration, or what supports the stabilization of that place. Because my experience is that I dip in, and those dips last a bit longer. I don't move as far away, but it certainly doesn't feel like a stable state. And at times that's frustrating, and other times it's totally okay. But
When that, let's call it experience or that opening took place, what was beautiful about it was that you were not there.
yes, that's exactly right.
Isn't it? You, the kind of personal sense of yourself,
Right.
was not there. But you, the infinite self, is there. The self is there, which is what we really are.
Right.
And that's why it doesn't feel like a jerk into some strange state. It feels totally natural.
One way, on one occasion I described it, it felt like the most extraordinary thing, and it felt so ordinary I could
Yes.
almost not notice it.
Yes. Yeah. But who is this I there to even not notice it even? Because something is there, no, in which all this contrast of experiences,
Or something reconstitutes after the
Yeah.
experience, and then has
Okay.
a commentary and has a...
Okay, so in that instant, there's no I person to evaluate anything.
Right.
It can still there's some fragrance left behind if one feels like, whoa, what is this? And I'm like, wow, this is just like, I am, where are you? You might be asked, where are you? And it's not uncommon to hear the response like, I am everywhere. Oh my God, I'm everywhere. You know? How can someone who is a regular person off the street speak like that? Nobody speaks like that. I am everywhere. And they're not asking to be believed. So it's just a total relaxed understanding and conviction and acceptance in this moment. I am everywhere. You see? Meaning that no person can say that. It's not the person that say that. The consciousness, freed from the personal trappings, alone can confess this. I am, and I am everywhere. Then somehow, it's like, usually at this point, some fear can kick in. Like, oh my God, what's happening? It's like, your usual references are not in place. Mm-hmm. And that panic can sometimes seem to jerk back and bring in the sense of the person again.
Yes, or
Yeah.
what can happen is we have to start dealing with the world, and we have to deal with people and situations.
Usually not some space is given to you by the grace of the universe to sort of like percolate into that state, to marinate in that for a little bit. You see? Either one thing may happen, which is that the sense of the person quickly comes back, or if it comes back, it feels quite distant. There's quite a sense of detachment from that. It feels like a foreigner. Mm-hmm. I often say that for many people who have been traveling, many people I speak to travel to places like India and spend 6 months, a year traveling, and then they return to their usual familiar home place, and you know everything. All the houses are the same that you left, and the neighbors are there, and the same cars are there, the same shops are there, everything. You're deeply familiar with it, but yet something is detached from that. So you can function within this, and then people come and says, "Hey, John, so and so is not anymore together," and whatever. You hear all the stories. You understand what they mean, but the impact is heavily reduced on you because something has been washed off. So there is a similar kind of sense as someone is sort of dropping the person's self is just fading in the light of a truer seeing or discovery. What happens for many people is that the I person sense comes in and is again believed to be, so that one is back and I'm back. I am back. Mm-hmm. I am back again in my mind and so on. But the real place hasn't left. It cannot leave. It never left in the first place. It's always here.
It's almost like we leave it. We re-identify with the
Yeah.
ego, or we move away
This
from
we
it.
is not real. This is what I want to point out. You see, you are still the same,
Yes.
but a familiar identity again comes in and says, my mind came back and I start to think about this and so on. So, but if it is seen truly, it is just another sensation like any other sensation. It is only because so much importance has been placed upon the personal identity that it feels that that is significant, that it has come back seems significant. It is not significant, actually, to that which never left. You see, the self, the pure self, your pure self, never left. Because as you confessed earlier, I am everywhere. So even I am here, even when the sense of myself as a person is here, I am here. But because so much interest and so much investment energetically in terms of identity and association and conditioning, we assume and impart a greater sense of factuality to the person sense, the person notion, than to the self, which you say also, it was extraordinary and at the same time ordinary. That, it is beyond even extraordinary and ordinary. Why you say it is ordinary? It is because it is so totally natural and so totally effortless. And it's that effortlessness that does not need to, if we are conscious of this and be reminded of it, then somehow the sense that the whole mind has come, the person has come back in, will not register so strongly as being significant. And if that is kept up for a little bit, it will just go.
Yes. And also it seems what we're identified with in that moment seems important. You were saying, for example, at the start, that if I can paraphrase, our suffering is basically created by believing we are our egoic self.
Yes.
And so sometimes we believe that completely, other times that doesn't exist. And sometimes we partly believe that, and we partly are landed somewhere else.
Yes.
And I guess part of my question as well is, we can be different places of that identification, and what supports dropping, and you've answered it somewhat, but what else supports? And I think especially at the heart of my question is, when there are many stimulants pulling us into the relative world, let's say, there are demands on our time, there are demands on our energy, and that's all pulling us into those different identifications, and it can feel like that's pulling us away from the fact that we are also everything.
Yeah. Actually, one has to become again fully established in the self. When I say one, who is this one I'm referring to? It is the consciousness that still has some leftover noise from identity, because identity doesn't just leave completely. The fragrance or the odor of it still hangs around a little bit, and it's got some tendrils that are, really fast growing. I mean, quickly it seems to again create the sense of a persona and everything like that. This is the most crucial and critical time in what we would call like sadhana, which is when one's practicing, one's looking, one's intense scrutiny, intense probing into, not just once, but twice and thrice and fourth time and fifth time, to keep proving and reproving your seeing. Where I say you have to digest your seeing, because otherwise there is a joy element to discovering that you're not the person. And sometimes we go off joyriding in that state for a little bit. But almost certainly at some point you'll crash again. You'll come into a sense of crashing. But in some beings, the intensity or the impact of the seeing is so powerful that the psychological self is driven back so powerfully that it takes quite a while for it to start seeping back into the picture, as it were, And I used to have a little a pond I made in my garden, a very small garden here in London. And at one time I had this thing about making a pond and putting fishes in it. And it worked actually for about nearly a year. And someone gave me some duckweed. I don't know if you call it duckweed.
Yeah.
They gave me some because I wanted to put some plants in it and things. They put this duckweed, and in a short time, it was completely covered over. It looked like a golf course, this little thing like this. And
Poor fish, nowhere to go.
Well, the people came and they said, "Wow, what's going on here? A mini golf course or what?" And I said, "Actually, there's water there, And we throw a little pebble in, you throw the pebble in, and the whole thing would just open up like this. And clear water and fishes swimming on it would come. But after a few minutes, you see it slowly closing back up again. And a little bit of something like this is happening, where the psychological identity seems blown apart or blown off by the impact of the seeing. But if it is not kept up, or in a sense, then it just drifts back, the noise again of the sense of personhood is drifting back. At a later stage, when the seeing is much more mature, this drifting in and out becomes less and less significant, to the point where at a certain point it doesn't even register as happening anymore.
Yes.
But in the early stages, it is important to follow through and keep looking, because the mind in the character of what I'd call the distractor, or some distracting energy, it's not going to give up that easily. It seems to come back in, and I sometimes point out that there seems to be there's a force inside that seems to hold our attention, or to keep the attention only upon our physical being.
Yes.
And our sort of like daily existence and so on. And there's a force inside that turns towards the heightening of consciousness and so on.
Yes. And this brings me to another question I want to ask you, but we're out of time for this part one, so we'll come to the part two. But I'm really curious about the role of self-commitment in that, but we'll come to that in a part two. But for now, Mooji, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you. And thank you for watching, and we look forward to talking to you again, hopefully on Conscious 2, very soon. Bye-bye.